And gentlemen, I'm going to show you two articles that just came out, and it's all regarding prison visitations coming to an end. And not only are they making a ton of money off of the free and cheap labor on prisoners because it's nothing but slavery, they are now putting the squeeze on families. So they are going to end face-to-face contact with prisoners seeing their families and replace it with video conferencing that's going to run the family $12.99 for 20 minutes of talk time with their loved ones. This is what happens when you have hybrids running your system. They think human contact is not important. They want to use artificial means for you to contact your family, so everything's on video conference. And many of these families of prisoners are poor. They don't have a lot of money to spend like that. So is it really fair to do this to the families of prisoners? And America is also notorious for putting innocent people in jail. And they don't care. They'll keep an innocent person in prison for decades. And every single year we see people getting exonerated, and that should never have been in there in the first place. And always had a pattern of this since the beginning. But let's examine this whole thing. Now, they're saying that they want to eliminate face-to-face visits because people are bringing contraband into the prison, and they don't want that. So instead of doing a better job in checking the people that come into the prisons, they are cutting off all face-to-face visitation because they suck at their jobs. All right, now look at this article right here on Bloomberg. Stop squeezing prisoner families for cash. Replacing visitor hours with costly video conferencing is a short-sighted policy. And we know who is going to be squeezed the most, because most of your prisoners are Black men, by the way, that are in there for non-violent drug possession. They ain't getting you in there for no most violent crime. They are getting you in there for the most remedial thing ever, just like they did when prisons first opened. What were they getting you in there for? Vagrancy, loitering. If you laughed out loud, you went to prison in public. If you did not have a job, you went to jail. And they knew most Black people were unemployed, especially after slavery. So you didn't have jobs. They set the system up to make sure the Black man, especially the Black man, would always be sitting in prison. And that's exactly what's happened. You ain't no most violent. If that was the case, they wouldn't be getting you in there for drug possession up the wazoo. And the bottom line is, this shit don't work. Something is wrong with your system when you incarcerate more of your own citizens than any other country on the face of the earth. Something is wrong with your damn system. It don't need to be reformed. Reforming is not going to help what's going on. This shit needs to go. It needs to be dismantled and done away with. Period. This prison system exists. Sorry, I had to take a sip. This prison system exists because America runs every damn thing like a plantation. They don't know how to do a business any other way. Everything in this country is ran like a goddamn plantation. Okay, let's get into this article. Get caught committing a felony and the government is apt to do terrible things to you. Stick you in a cage, control what you eat, when you sleep, what you do with your time. Should the government also be allowed to prevent you from seeing your family? Some prisons are ending face to face contact for prisoners, shunning them instead to a video call system. This system costs $12.99 for 20 minutes. $12.99 for 20 minutes. Now, remember, most of these people in there are poor, and they come from poor families. For a population that tends to start out economically disadvantaged, that's a heavy financial burden. Not to mention that you can't hold a daughter's hand, place a comforting arm around a father's shoulder, or hug your wife. Prisons, as we all know from watching television, have a pretty significant contraband problem. Some of it brought in by visiting relatives. So that tells me you just don't do a good job with checking these people when they come in. So because you suck at your job, now everybody has to be cut off from their loved one that's sitting in prison because you suck at how you run things and do things. And that's really the truth. If you keep prisoners from mingling in person with their families, you can keep them from getting their hands on some items they shouldn't have. So they mastermind a way where they profit from both the prisoner and now the prisoner's family with video calls. This is nothing but greed, y'all. This is nothing but greed. And who are they squeezing the most? Black families, because most of your incarcerated in this country are Black families. Oh, man. This is just a win-win situation for the prison industrial system in this country, isn't it? That's the way they like it. Okay. I'm just going to go down a little bit because this is ridiculous. It's not just a problem with video conferencing. Phone calls from prisons are horrifically expensive. So often are ordinary items in the commissary. And there are frequently surcharges for families to deposit outside money in those commissary accounts. Innumerable indignant articles have been written asking the same basic question. How can we justify price gouging poor people who are already suffering through a prison term? And by extension, the innocent families, also mostly poor, who are already suffering separation from a family member. There are partial explanations. Items in the prison commissary can't necessarily be dispensed as easy as they are at the grocery store because prisons have to ensure that prisoners don't get access to any packaging that could be turned into a weapon. And phone calls are so expensive in part because every call has to be recorded and spot monitored to ensure that, say, a crime lord is not continuing to run his business while in prison. Okay, I'm just going to go down a little. It's customary to blame the companies who provide prison services for this state of affairs, and believe me, I do. But as the Washington Post reported, a substantial share of the money goes to governments. According to one study, about 42% of the cost of an average call was going to kickbacks, commissions to the government that signed the contracts. Given that there are, in fact, some extraordinary costs involved in offering phone service to a prison, it seems likely that the government was making more. We know that. Okay, so they overprice these phone calls, and the government is pocketing all of this money at the expense of the prisoners and the prison families. I'm not surprised. The FCC cracked down on phone gouging in 2015, but an appeals court reversed that decision this year. So they can price gouge all they want and squeeze as much money out of the prisoners and their families. According to the Post, they often engage in predatory tactics to make sure that the sweet, sweet money keeps rolling in, switching to proprietary deposit systems that the commissaries, rather than letting families send the prisoners money orders or uh, in-person visits, so that they are forced to rely on expensive video conferences. Wow. So look at it this way, y'all. It's a win-win situation for the prison industrial system. That's what this is. They win. So we have a social interest in making family bonds as strong as possible, and therefore we should think long and hard before embracing any policy that makes it hard to visit prisoners. Video calling technology should be welcomed as an additional way for prisoners to stay in touch with the people who can help them through their eventual reentry. But for just that reason, we should want to make it as cheap as possible rather than trying to make it generate revenue to fund the prison system. Well, that's all they do. And we should be very reluctant indeed to make it the only way for prisoners to see people who will eventually welcome them home. America sucks. I'm sorry, but y'all do. You do. Just the way you run this whole prison system, that tells me something is seriously wrong with the psyche of the people that are running these systems. So now here we go with the eliminating visitations and making families, not the prisoners, the families, pay for these expensive ass video conference calls whenever they want to reach out to their loved one in prison. Wow. I mean, this article that you're looking at, this young woman in the picture is calling her boyfriend in jail, and they're complaining about the sound quality of the video call. They're saying they can't even hear each other. So, so not only are you making them pay $13 for a 20-minute phone call, the quality of the call sucks. Okay. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And don't forget to hit on that notification bell, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.